What if foolishness wasn't a weakness, but the doorway to wisdom? For centuries, the fool has been mocked, dismissed, and even pitted. He stumbles through life without caution, breaks the rules of logic, and ignores society's expectations. On the surface, he looks lost, naive, even ridiculous. And yet, time and time again, the fool reappears in philosophy, in psychology, in mythology, in spirituality. Not as a joke, but as a paradox. The one who knows nothing is often the one who sees most clearly. Behind the mask of foolishness lies something deeper, a freedom that intellect can't reach, a wisdom that analysis can't touch. The fool reminds us that sometimes it's only when we let go of certainty that the truth finally reveals itself. So the real question is, what if naivety isn't weakness at all, but the hidden key to life's greatest wisdom? Think about it. The wise person often appears confident, knowledgeable, and certain. But certainty can harden into arrogance, into blindness, into the inability to see beyond one's own assumptions. The fool, however, has no such armor. They stumble into situations with openness, without pretense, without fear of looking ridiculous. And because of this, they sometimes stumble into truths that the clever miss. In Jungian psychology, the archetype of the fool, sometimes called the trickster or the divine child, represents a return to innocence, a breaking of rigid patterns, and a reminder that true transformation often begins with vulnerability. The fool is the one who dares to take the first step into the unknown, even when reason says it is dangerous or absurd. There's a reason why the fool is card number 0 in the tarot. 0 is the number of beginnings, of infinite potential, of emptiness waiting to be filled. The fool does not know what lies ahead, and yet he steps forward with trust, with curiosity, with an almost childlike faith in life. How many of us have lost that sense of faith? How many of us calculate every step, overthink every choice, analyze until we paralyze ourselves, and in doing so, miss the spontaneous flow of life? The fool reminds us that sometimes wisdom is not about control, but about surrender. But let's go deeper into the psychology of naivety. Naivety is often seen as weakness, as ignorance. Yet psychologists have observed that those who allow themselves to be naive, to ask questions others are too proud to ask, often uncover insights that experts overlook. Naivety keeps the mind open. The beginner's mind, as Zen philosophy calls it, is empty and receptive, free of preconceptions. This emptiness is not stupidity. It is fertile ground. The fool, in his supposed ignorance, is not weighed down by the burden of false certainty. And because of that, he can see what others cannot. Look at children. They are naturally naive, and yet they possess a kind of spontaneous wisdom adults spend decades trying to reclaim. A child sees beauty in a flower without needing to categorize it. A child laughs freely, cries openly, and asks questions without shame. Somewhere along the way, as we grow older, we lose this openness. We learn to fear embarrassment, to protect our image, to hide our vulnerability. And in doing so, we begin to lose touch with the raw wisdom of simply being present, of experiencing life without filters. The fool is a reminder of what we once had and what we can regain. Consider how many breakthroughs in history came not from experts, but from outsiders, dreamers, and so-called fools. Socrates called himself the wisest man in Athens precisely because he admitted he knew nothing. His humility, his willingness to appear foolish, was what allowed him to pursue truth endlessly. Galileo was mocked as a fool for suggesting the Earth was not the center of the universe. The Wright brothers were considered foolish dreamers until their flying machine lifted off the ground. Every great innovation, every leap of progress, has at some point looked like foolishness. Why? Because wisdom is not always about following what is established. Sometimes it is about daring to trust the unknown. In our personal lives, too, the fool has a place. How often have you avoided trying something new because you were afraid of looking stupid? How often have you silenced your curiosity because you thought people would laugh? And yet, Those moments where you let yourself be naive, where you allowed yourself to ask, to try, to fail, those were the moments you grew the most. Naivety is the birthplace of growth. Wisdom is not found in never making mistakes, but in embracing mistakes as part of the path. The Fool teaches us this lesson. To be naive is to be alive, to remain open to experience, to risk failure in the pursuit of truth. There is also a psychological freedom in playing the fool. When you embrace your vulnerability, when you no longer fear looking ridiculous, you become untouchable in a way. The ego thrives on image, on appearing strong, smart, and flawless. But the fool has no such concern. He laughs at himself, embraces his awkwardness, and dances into the unknown with lightness. This is why the fool is such a powerful archetype. He exposes the fragility of the ego and reveals that freedom comes not from control, but from letting go of appearances. But here's the paradox. Naivety without awareness can be dangerous. Blind trust can lead to harm. The wisdom of the fool is not in reckless ignorance, but in the ability to step into the unknown without being shackled by fear. It is about cultivating openness while remaining conscious. The fool is not about pretending the world is safe or easy. It is about daring to live despite uncertainty. This balance between innocence and awareness is what makes the fool such a fascinating psychological symbol. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about intelligence, about strength, about what it really means to be wise. The paradox of the fool is that he is dismissed by the clever, mocked by the proud, and underestimated by the experienced. Yet history, mythology, and psychology reveal that the fool's position is far from powerless. Instead, it grants him a freedom that the wise and the cautious often lose. Because he has little to defend and nothing to prove, he can walk into unknown territory where others fear to step. And in doing so, he often discovers what those more cautious souls could never find. Consider for a moment the archetype of the fool in storytelling. In tarot, the fool is card 0. He begins the journey with a light heart, carrying only a small bag, and stepping toward the unknown with trust in life itself. Many interpret this as naivety, but the deeper lesson is that he is not bound by cynicism. He does not allow fear to dictate his steps. Psychologically, this represents the openness of the beginner's mind, a state of awareness where possibilities are endless because the mind has not yet imprisoned itself with rigid certainty. Now, what does this mean for us in our lives? Most of us fear being seen as the fool. We fear embarrassment, failure, or appearing inexperienced. This fear leads us to overprotect ourselves. We avoid risks, we hesitate before trying new things, and we close doors before they can even open. But by doing so, we trade the innocence of discovery for the stagnation of safety. The fool reminds us that wisdom does not always lie in preparation or calculation. It often lies in the courage to begin, even if we don't yet know the path. Think about the moments in your own life where growth occurred. Were there times when you had everything perfectly figured out? Or were they times when you stumbled, fell, and learned through experience? The psychology of the fool teaches that the very mistakes we try so hard to avoid are often the foundation of our deepest wisdom. Without risk, we never expand. Without the possibility of failure, we never taste genuine success. There is also a hidden resilience within the fool. Because he expects little, he is rarely devastated by loss. Because he carries no heavy armor, he can move lightly across difficult terrain. Contrast this with the person who clings desperately to reputation, possessions, or intellectual superiority. When life inevitably shakes their foundation, they collapse under the weight of what they tried so hard to protect. The fool, in his innocence, is paradoxically indestructible. His flexibility allows him to endure. His simplicity makes him strong. Psychologists speak of beginner's mind as a powerful tool in therapy and self-discovery. It is the art of setting aside what you think you know, so you can approach situations with openness and curiosity. Children naturally embody this quality. They explore, question, and try without shame. Adults, on the other hand, often lose it. They become rigid, defensive, and afraid to appear foolish. Yet when adults reclaim the fool's perspective, they rediscover creativity, spontaneity, and resilience. Wisdom, then, is not the opposite of foolishness. Wisdom often hides within it. To be wise is not to avoid mistakes, but to allow mistakes to transform you. To be wise is not to know all answers, but to live fully inside the questions. The fool walks forward not because he knows the way, but because he trusts that the way will reveal itself in the walking. That is the essence of hidden wisdom. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine someone who dreams of starting a new career, creating art, or moving to a new country. If they wait until they have absolute certainty, they may wait their entire lives. The rational mind will always find reasons to delay. But the fool within says, step forward now. Yes, you may stumble. Yes, others may laugh. But only by moving will the path unfold. And if you dare to walk it, you will discover not only the world, but also yourself. In relationships, too, the fool has something vital to teach. Many guard their hearts behind walls of fear, refusing to risk vulnerability. But the fool's innocence allows genuine connection. To love is, in many ways, an act of foolishness. It is to give without guarantee, to trust without certainty. And yet, is there any greater wisdom than to love deeply, despite the risks? So, the next time you are tempted to hide behind the mask of certainty, consider the hidden power of appearing foolish. Remember that every master was once a beginner, every wise sage once walked blindly into the unknown, and every story of greatness began with a step that could have been mocked. The fool's path is not safe, but it is alive. And in that aliveness, wisdom flourishes. Here's my question for you. Where in your life are you being called to embrace the fool's courage? Is there a risk you've been avoiding, a dream you've been delaying, or a step you've been too afraid to take? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this message resonated with you, remember this. Wisdom is not about being flawless. It's about daring to live fully. Carry the spirit of the fool with you. Trust the unknown, and discover the hidden wisdom waiting on the other side of your fears. If you found value in this reflection, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so together we can continue exploring the depths of psychology, philosophy, and the mystery of the human spirit.